Hi everyone, welcome back to Nightbird Tarot. My name is Brooke and welcome to your second week, second lesson of how to read the tarot for love. This week I wanted to touch upon the Major Arcana cards, which are 22 in all in the tarot deck. However, I'm only going to use 11 that I think are very important or very significant for love readings or how to read the tarot in love. So I have before you 11 cards. I'm not going to touch upon all the major arcana. I'm going to specify different cards in terms of how to proceed in reading for love. So let's begin. I'm going to start from the top line, and what you see in the middle is the Strength card, and then I'll finish at the bottom. So the top line are very much positive cards in love readings. Strength is in the middle for a reason. Strength is very much the backbone of any relationship or situation pertaining to love. The bottom row is very much about change or endings, or the negative cards that could possibly be negative or indicative of change in love readings. So let's begin with the Sun card, number 19. The Sun card, if you're wanting to get a yes or no answer from the tarot is not set up for yes or no. There's other divination systems that are better at doing that. However, the Sun card can be a yes answer for readings. So let's say, for example, you're reading for someone or for yourself, or does this person like me, or will we fall in love together? And if this card should fall in the future position, the potential there is yes. This is the most positive card of the tarot deck. Very positive about success, positivity, good times, and it's a great validator of yes when this card would show up for love. And it's also very indicative of a great time hanging out with your significant other or loved one, with your friends, everybody getting together, celebrations, and just indicative of a great community kind of spirit and great time. So this is a great positive card. If it should fall in a love reading, of course, always use your intuition as your guide. And it's also very much dependent upon the position that the card is in, as well as the cards preceding it and following it. So yeah, the Sun card is very, very positive when it comes to reading the tarot for love. So I wanted to begin with that card first, as it's probably the greatest validator of yes, especially in love readings. Now, following this, what we see is the Empress. The Empress can be a great indicator for love readings of marriage, motherhood, fertility, pregnancy. She is very much the mother of the major arcana, can be very much indicative of marriage, if so coupled with other cards, for example, like the Three of Cups or the Ace of Cups. Empress is very positive. She can be very nurturing, and she's basically validating to you that there are potentials for those things. So when I see her show up, very much telling me, especially in combination with other cards, or where she's placed in the reading, of course, use your intuition as your guide, as always. Very much can be linked to marriage, motherhood, pregnancy, etc. with the Empress card. So following her is probably one of the most notorious cards in the tarot deck. Now, I'm using the Robin Wood Tarot deck, and her cards are very, of course, descriptive. Nothing's left out in this card, but so I think you get the gist. But the Lover's card, I think is very misunderstood. The Lover's card, many times I've seen it misinterpreted or gone right for the jugular in terms of when this card shows up, it's a card of a love triangle, or it's a card of cheating, or it's a card of a third party. Not necessarily. This is a card of great love, love eternal. Very much a card of choice, very much a card of crossroads. This is also an indicator of possibly having to make a choice between two people. The Lover's card is a card of passion, but it's also a card of choice, and it's a great card of crossroads. So if you're perhaps doing a reading for yourself or someone else, this card would show up, let's say in the potential near future or the environment. This could be an indicator to you that perhaps you need to you might have more than one choice. There might be a path you need to consider. It also could be a great indicator of a great passionate love. So not necessarily about cheating for me. And from my experience, this card, when it shows up, dependent upon other cards, it's not necessarily about cheating. Now, if this card was coupled with, let's say, the Moon card. The Moon card is very much about deception, very much about fluctuating moods or uncertainty. See the combination with that with the Lovers and the Moon. The Lovers and the Moon combined would possibly be an indication of deception within a relationship, but it also could be uncertainty or fluctuating moods about something as well. So it really depends, once again, upon your own intuition as well as the placement of the card in a reading, as well as coupled with other combinations of cards. But as it stands on its own, and I think the Lover's card is attributed to the astrological sign of Gemini, which is very much about the twins. If I'm wrong about that, can someone please comment? But the Lover's card, to me, when I see other people performing readings, for example, on YouTube, and this card shows up and they're like, oh, third party, he's cheating on you. Oh, there's somebody else, there's traits. No, not necessarily, because it's very much dependent upon where it lays with other cards. So don't be alarmed when you see this card. It's very much about choices, but also very much about crossroads. So very much about perhaps a change of some kind as well. But it's a very positive card about passion and love eternal. So the Lover's card. Now following this, we see the Star. The Star card is so magical because it's very much a card of healing. It's a card of faith. It's a card of faith restored. It's a card of, I really think the Star card is a card of God. It's tied in with angelic energies. It's very much about balance and harmony. And it's a great card of having faith restored or a period of healing. And it's also being divinely guided. So perhaps you're reading for yourself or for someone else and the Star card would show up. It's basically being a validator of everything's going to work itself out. Don't overthink it. Don't obsess about it. Let it go with its natural flow. You're being divinely guided, and there's some form of spiritual or angelic protection associated with this card. It's a very spiritual card and very positive to see in love readings when this shows up. So I think the Star card's a very much a card of spirituality and very much a God card to me. So the Star card's very, very positive. Now following this, I wanted to speak about the card of Temperance. The card of Temperance, from my studies, very much about diversity in relationships. This card, when it shows up, could very much signify relationships of diverse backgrounds. This could be different cultures, different race, different religious beliefs, and the blending of harmonious compatibility with that. This also can be a card of harmony and cooperation with others from perhaps for example, you're dating someone who is from a totally different country or from a different race or from a different ethnic background, and you may be worried about how the family feels about that. If this card would show up, it very much would be a validator to you, depending upon the position it's in, of diversity will be embraced and diversity will be accepted, and creating harmony out of that. There's no fear with this card. It's a very positive attribute indicating to you of peace and harmony and cooperation and the blending of different backgrounds or communities in relationships, so to speak. So that's a very, very positive card as well. It's a great card of balance that needs to be possibly restored in relationships as well. So I think that's a great card to see. Now, why did I put strength in the middle? Well, strength is the bridge. Without it, you can't have relationships. You can't have any kind of relationship without strength. Strength is not necessarily physical strength, obviously. Strength is more of an inner resolve. Strength will show up. I've seen it in relationships that have just started in love readings. For example, strength showed up one time next to the Ace of Cups. The Ace of Cups is, of course, about great love or new love in your life, and strength was next to it, and it was very much in tune with having to be the stronger person in the relationship, or you're going to have to really be emotionally strong in this relationship, or this love may test your boundaries emotionally, etc. So strength is very much the bridge. It's very much connecting the positive to the negative, or the things perhaps that we don't want to see or deal with in relationships. And it's very much the backbone in a love reading. And when it does show up in a love reading, it's a great positive supportive card, and it also can be very indicative of emotional support from the other person or from people in your life, etc. So strength is a great card to have, to see in a love reading. Now I'm going to start the second line, and I pulled these cards, if I can say it, specifically for a reason. And I could have broken out all 22 Major Arcana, but I was drawn to these cards in particular for love readings and to showcase you or talk about a little bit more, not only of the positive love cards in the Major Arcana, but also touch upon perhaps the shadowy or the negative cards in the Major Arcana when it comes to love relationships, and it's not necessarily negative for all of these cards, but they do have a purpose. So beginning with the Tower. The Tower, as you can see, the symbolism of the card, the Tower can indicate upheaval, it can indicate a breakthrough, it can indicate destruction, it can indicate something that was unstoppable, something that has to occur. So the Tower to me indicates a spiritual clearing away of the old stuff, the stuff that's no longer working, the stuff that's no longer necessary, where there's had to be a natural breakdown of some kind. So if the Tower would show up in a reading, perhaps for someone else or for yourself, depending upon the position, and of course your psychic intuition as your guide, your intuitiveness, the Tower can very much be an indicator of unforeseen change. Change that is inevitable. The breakdown of a relationship, to clear away the old, to bring in the new. So this card has its purpose. It has its purpose, and when this card would show up as, say, potential future position, it does not necessarily have to be a negative. It can be very much what is needed or necessary to progress. Okay, so this card's very important. I think it's a very important spiritual card as well, and it's not necessarily doom and gloom when we see the Tower card show up. Now the Moon card, and I spoke about the Moon card earlier, coupled next to the Lovers. The Moon card, I have seen this card shown up in love readings in particular, especially when somebody is keeping a secret, especially if the other person or yourself is very much hiding something. This also could be a card indicative of fluctuating moods or someone who's very moody, symbolized by, the tides of the moon or the different cycles of the moon. Someone who's very much in tune with their emotions as well. This also could be a card of manipulation. This also can be literally something going on at night, indicative of the background here. I've seen that as well. The Moon card is some form of theft. Sometimes I've seen that come up in relationship readings, love readings, where something was stolen, like actually literally stolen physically from somebody else. So this card can have different meanings. So dependent upon the position it's in, coupled with combinations of other cards as well as your intuition as your guide, this card can very much signify some sort of theft, deception, something murky, and something perhaps that you or the client could definitely be aware of or have assumptions or suspicions that could confirm that as well, if this card would show up. Now, coupled with this, we see the Devil card. The Devil card in love readings is very significant for relationships, or even if you were doing a reading for yourself or someone else and you're asking about a new person that you just met and where will the relationship go. I've seen the Devil show up and I've been warned. I would take this card as a warning, especially if you're reading for someone who's just entered into a new relationship or you're asking about a particular person. The Devil card can be very much about sex and lust and carnal desires and being a very kind of 50 Shades of Grey card, but it's also a card indicative of addiction. I've seen it come up in relationship readings where perhaps the person was involved in an abusive relationship, mentally, emotionally, physically. Of course, that person's not going to reveal that to me. If it's coupled with different cards, it was a validator that they were being in an abusive relationship that can come up, or being coupled up with someone who has addiction, alcoholism, drug addiction, gambling, sex addiction. So this card is very much about being chained and bound to something. It can also be indicative of depression, Great Depression. So the Devil card very much is a card of warning if it would come up in a love relationship. So just keep that in mind. Now, following this, we see the Death card. The Death card, of course, does not actually literally mean death. It's more symbolic of change and transformation. In a love reading, perhaps, this would indicate an ending to a relationship if it was in the future position, potentially, dependent upon where it's placed in a reading as well as using your intuition, death can very much symbolize actual physical change, transformation, endings, and bringing about some sort of final ending, especially with the death card. So it's not a negative perhaps in some situations or in some readings, but it can be very indicative of some sort of spiritual transformation and an actual ending associated with this card. And the symbolism of death is depicted very much differently in different tarot decks. But the rose in this deck is very pertinent because it's large. And this is the symbolism of the mystic rose. The mystic rose, you can Google that. I used to have a blog and I wrote about that a long time ago. But the mystic rose, do not get it confused with the Catholic mystic rose, but mystic rose, the tarot. You should read about that because it has a lot of significance with this card. Now, last but not least, we see the Hanged Man. And the Hanged Man is very significant because this card can be very much about fluctuation, sacrifice, having to make major decisions, being on the fence, confusion. Let's say you're reading for yourself or for someone else. What should I do about this person? This card may show up dependent upon where it is in the reading. There may be uncertainty. What am I willing to sacrifice in this relationship? What are they willing to sacrifice to make it work? Confusion, uncertainty. And of course, I don't read the cards reversed. Reversed, it would have a different connotation. But the Hanged Man is very significant in indecision and uncertainty and confusion in love readings. So I wanted to touch upon specific Major Arcana cards. I didn't want to go through all of them. I don't want to confuse everybody, but I chose specific ones for this lesson to touch upon their significance. Always remember that each card on its own has its own meaning. Combined with other cards, it will have an even broader meaning. Dependent upon its placement, will even have a broader meaning. So it's very much limitless in terms of how you can interpret them. But I wanted to touch upon these in particular that I have seen time and time again in different situations and in different readings, and to apply that knowledge and to pass that on to you. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I will be back next week for more lessons on how to read the Tarot for Love. So take care, everybody, and I'll speak to you soon.